Hi, Morgan. How are you today?
Are you?
I'm good. Tell us your name and the type of career that you have chosen to pursue.
I'm Dr. Morgan Kocher. I'm a certified athletic trainer and certified strength and conditioning coach, but more importantly, I'm an assistant professor of exercise science at Heidelberg University in Tiffin, Ohio. I guess if we're going into the how I got here, I started out as I wanted to be an athletic trainer. My sister had was going into that as she was ahead of me, and she's kind of what we refer to as job security in athletic training. She has injured herself in a variety of ways.
Oh, I
And so
see.
that as an athlete, that kind of got me interested in staying with athletics and dealing with injuries and helping people. And so I did my undergraduate at Linfield College in Oregon in athletic training, and then wanted to get a little bit better at um, dealing with people, as being an athlete in undergrad along with athletic training kept me a little busy. So I felt like I wanted to get a little bit more experience. And so I went to the master's program at University of Hawaii in Manoa. And after that, I got more experience with research and transitioned into kind of more of a research teaching position and ended up staying there for my PhD and then got hired out here in Heidelberg to start the exercise science program.
Okay, now that's two completely different types of careers. One, I would say um, there are a lot of people who want to be athletic trainers, right? And they will stay with that their whole life. And then the academic side is kind of a different profession altogether. Um, Obviously, you're in the same industry, which is very helpful. But what about someone who wants to, dare I say, who really wants to be an athletic trainer and that is their career goal? Um, can you tell us a little bit about that profession so that we can help those people? And then we'll talk about the academic side next. But talk about being an athletic trainer, the educational requirements, and maybe talk a little bit about the job. Who would be a good athletic trainer?
So I was interested in athletic training. Obviously, it's part of the allied healthcare field. So it's dealing primarily with care and treatment of injuries, but there's other aspects that we work with as well. So with athletic training, it is currently required to have a master's entry level program. So you have to go to an accredited program. And then after you successfully complete that program, you do have to sit for a national exam. And then in each state, there's some different licensure or registration requirements. So to get into one of those master's programs, there are several of them in the state of Ohio. We have one of them here at Heidelberg, so I'm not going to try to be biased, but it's probably going to come out. Um,
You
so
can
you
be
need to
biased.
have
It's fine.
some of the prereqs. So there are different prereqs. Usually it's you have to have some anatomy, there's a semester of chemistry, some basic classes. It really doesn't matter what your major is, but I would suggest something that deals with either exercise science or kinesiology or health science, where you get a chance to be kind of hands-on dealing with people and then the classes actually count towards your major and it's a little bit easier. Depending on the school, sometimes there's some accelerated programs to get you into what's called like a 3+2, where you do 3 years of undergrad. And as long as you have enough credits by the end of that third year and have all the prereqs and all the degree requirements, you can transition from there straight into the master's program. So if you're looking for what schools to look into that, it's called CATE is the accreditation agency, so CAATE, or on the NATA website, National Athletic Trainers Association, you can find a list of accredited programs and figure out where you might want to look into and who you might want to contact. Our program director at Heidelberg is Dr. Ryan Musgrave, so I'll shamelessly plug there if anybody wants to reach out to him for more information.
So, who would make a good athletic trainer? Someone who has been an athlete? Do you have to have been an athlete?
You don't necessarily have to have been an athlete. We have several non-athletes in our cohort right now, but there are a lot of athletes in the field. We want to still be around the sports, and so we go from there. Usually it's somebody who cares, right? We are responsible for being there early, or not we in the general sense, being there early to set everything up. So if we have an early practice, the first people there are generally the athletic trainers because they have to get everything ready. And then the last people to leave often are the athletic trainers. So it is a often long hours. Now that's if you're in a school setting. There's also other places you can work as an athletic trainer. It doesn't have to be working at a high school or a college dealing with athletics. One of my good friends from Masters is currently up in Detroit, and he's working with doing some injury prevention stuff and some ergonomic stuff. He's moved on to that. His wife is dealing more with being the connection between an electronic medical records company and the companies and the doctor's offices they work with. So it kind of works that space. Or I have another friend who just got done with a tour as the athletic trainer for Ringling Brothers Circus. So he was over in Europe for that. He's going down to Brazil in a couple weeks. He's also done like Disney on Ice. And
Well,
so
that's
if
cool.
I get a call from him of like, hey, how close are you to Columbus? And I'd go down and I get to have lunch with him and watch the show. And then they move on to the next city. Let's see, where else do I know people? There's so the industrial settings, there's also a lot with the military, right? A lot of times there's an athletic trainer and a strength and conditioning coach integrated into that system because they're athletes too, right? Just in a slightly different setting. There's a lot more tactical stuff for firefighters, police that's also coming up. So it's not just athletics, but yes, it is also, we are primarily dealing with athletics.
Wow, I hadn't thought of many of those places. I think that's pretty cool. Um, so let's talk a little bit about going into your professorship. What kind of education? That takes a lot more education, obviously. And tell us about your path. You already said, but the obligations that you have to what you have to do to get to being a professor.
So as a general rule, in order to teach a college class, you normally have to have kind of a degree above. So if I want to teach at the community college level, right, usually we're looking at somebody with at least a master's or a baccalaureate. And then to teach it for a 4-year program, you usually have to have at least a master's to be an instructor. And then to teach at a master's level, you should have a PhD. There are some exceptions to that, but that's kind of the general rule. Now, going about getting those, usually we want something we're looking for something in the field. I'm on a couple hiring committees right now where we're trying to hire professors. And, usually it's going to be, we want a terminal degree is preferred. So that would be a PhD or an educational doctorate or a doctorate of athletic training or something like that, either a clinical or a um, PhD. So with that, that's going to be generally anywhere from 3 to 4 years or more sometimes. Oops. Um, and that's going to take a little bit of work, right? It's not only just coursework, like your bachelor's degree. It's also going to be generally some form of long-term project, either a thesis where you're coming up with a study, right? I'm finding the hole in the research, and I'm designing a study, and I'm doing the study, and then I got to write it up, and then I have to defend it. So you have to not only propose it, telling your committee, your professors that, hey, I want to do the study, but then going back and after you've done it, going up and here's what I found, here's what I think it means, and hopefully, fingers crossed, publish it. And then for your dissertation, it's fairly similar, but you get to do even more. We have not only a bigger project, but then there's also what they call competencies, where they're going to give you areas to look into. And then you meet with your committee again, and they get to toss questions at you after you've written this big research paper on those areas. They're going to come and go through it and ask you questions, and it's not the funnest process, but it shows that you have that ability to learn and teach yourself and be able to bring synthesize that information and be able to discuss it. Now, the interesting part being, if you want to teach in a high school or middle school, right, you have to have an education degree, right, or have been through an education program. To teach at the college level, not so much. That also depends on the school you're at and where their focus is. So if you go to Ohio State, a lot of those professors don't have the bulk of their time isn't devoted towards teaching. I'm at a smaller school. We're a teaching school. I'm not required to do research, so I'm not in that publish or perish. right? I would like more time to get my own research done, but my students have needs and I want them to get ready for their next steps. So I spend a lot more time on that. So it kind of varies what setting you're in, what requirements they want, and kind of working from there.
That was going to be my next question. Actually, my next question was, what does your life as a professor look like? And you've nicely compared it to a larger school where they're doing so much writing and research. What do you get to do most of the time? Like in your, say, in 1 week, how much time are you in the classroom? Are you still getting to goof around at athletic practices? Are you getting to do that just for fun?
Depends on the week. So
Depends
this
on
week
the
right now,
week.
we're having registration. So my responsibilities are primarily teaching and advising. So I
Okay.
have the courses I teach. So I had 3 courses I taught today. Other days I don't teach 3 courses. It's not the same schedule every day. So sometimes it varies. It varies by semester. Sometimes I have to teach a new course. Sometimes I'm taking on an additional course. But generally I'm teaching anywhere from 4 to 5 courses a semester. In addition to, I also advise students. So generally the students in my major, I'm advising them on which classes to take. I'm helping them figure out what they might want to do after they graduate from Heidelberg, be it going on to grad school or, hey, I'm going to transition and I want to go into firefighting, right? Have that happen sometimes. Actually, one of my classmates got done with her master's, go be a went to be a firefighter, and then went to another grad program for nutrition, and now has gone and finished up her RN and just got a job as a nurse.
Wow.
So some people bounce around, right? We get our lifelong learners that are always looking to learn something new and get more information. Um, the other thing I do is I require my students to do a research project. So I actually spent a couple hours this afternoon. I have a senior who's finishing up an honors research project. We're doing an exercise intervention. So he's been using up a lot of my free time where I have to kind of be around while he's doing his project. It's his project. I help him design it. I help him kind of make sure it's going in the right direction or helping him when there's issues. But for the most part, he's the one running it, doing his scheduling. I want my students to get that experience of doing research so they understand what goes into it, because a lot of allied healthcare is becoming more and more research based, where you have to back up why I want to do this. It's not just because we've always done it. It's this is what I want to do. Right. The other thing I do occasionally is I'm not a clinical athletic trainer. I spend most of my time working with athletics as more of a strength and conditioning coach capacity, kind of performance enhancement, exercise science, where I'm helping them either do testing for, hey, we're trying to get numbers or figure out where our athletes are at. Or maybe going over their off-season conditioning plans and kind of helping poke holes to figure out why are we doing this? What could we do instead of that? What variations could we do? And so that'll be actually, I need to meet with football here coming up before the end of the year and soccer because we're currently building a new field house and that's going to have a new strength and conditioning facility in it. So with that comes new equipment, which means new opportunities for things. So I want to sit down with a couple of the coaches and go over what they could potentially do with some of that new equipment to make a better program for their athletes.
That's really neat. So you're part of that whole planning and implementation for the future of your sports team. I think that's really cool.
Mhm.
So you're advising Heidelberg. I don't know how large of a school it is. How many students do you advise, say, in a year?
So our school is roughly just probably a little bit over 800 undergrads, kind of right in there. I haven't looked at the recruitment numbers lately. Those numbers usually come out on Friday. Um, but our major between health science, exercise science, and then the other major in the hallway is sports management. We're about 20% of students on campus.
Oh, wow.
So we probably advise a little bit more than some of the other departments that don't have as many students in them. So I have currently, because I have some freshman orientation class, I have about 50 or so advisees.
Wow.
Right, that's probably on the higher end for campus. But again, like 15 or 17 of those are freshmen that I have a specific class that they're my advisees because they're in kind of a freshman orientation class. So we're trying to help those students navigate that transition to college of instead of, high school, you have your advisor kind of tells you you're taking this, this, and this.
Right.
There's a little bit more leeway when it comes to college.
Sure. That's great. I love your field. I think it's so interesting, and I hadn't thought of the different facets, but I've seen, like, you think of the Olympic athletes and all of those people that have personal teams that travel with them around the world, and there's so much opportunity in your field. I think it's just so interesting.
I got a chance to go to the U.S. Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs while I
Yeah.
was still in Hawaii. I was presenting at a conference in Denver, and it's look, the support system there is amazing, where they have their exercise science crew that works with doing adapting some of the training. They have their strength and conditioning primary guys, and then there's also the athletic trainers. And I have some friends that the way that system works for coverage for the Olympics for athletic training is you have to go in and volunteer your time. So over the summer, you get to go spend a couple weeks there, and they'll put you up. But then they're also monitoring you, and they decide, are you doing good enough for them to call you back? And then they can start bringing you back in. They actually only have about 2 or 3 staff full time, and the rest is people coming in or going and working with teams. And then you kind of have to work your way up from like the U14, U16,
Right.
U18. And so it takes several years to work yourself up to the level where potentially you're covering a national team in like the World Cup or the
So
Olympics.
what are the qualifications to get in on the ground level of that? What training
So
do
you
you already have to have in order to get
so
in
for
as
that you have to be a certified athletic trainer. So you have to have graduated from a program, passed your
okay?
boards, and then you basically say, "Hey, I want to come and help out." And then I'm sure it works fairly similar to, I'm sure the Wilds has some volunteer programs where it's, hey, that you come and right, they come, they get trained up, they're working and helping out, and at the same time they're also being observed
Yeah.
and evaluated. And yet, is this person good enough to bring back? Nope. Okay, yeah, sorry, thanks for coming. Appreciate the effort. We'll call you. And then it
Right.
moves on to, okay, yep, we like that one. Let's bring them back in and maybe they, responsibilities increase, and then it kind of you work your way up.
Very good. Is there anything else you want to say before we cut off?
Let's see. I guess the other one of just looking at the questions you did, I kind of did pivot. I started out with I wanted to work at a small school as an athletic trainer, and then I got the exposure to research. I liked asking why. I always wanted to know how things work, and that's kind of why I ended up more on the exercise science side because I tend to geek out like, hey, this causes this, and it's kind of like this little cascade of this is why this works. And that really helps you work better in a lot of these fields. If you understand the why behind something and how one thing affects another, it really helps you be more adaptable. And in the world of athletic training, that's kind of an important thing because sometimes we're dealing with stuff on the sidelines and you don't have your big fancy room, right? Or you're dealing with small high school and you don't have a budget. So having the ability to understand why this is working and how I can work around an injury or a lack of equipment really will make life a lot easier. I kind of refer to it as I often use the example of cooking, right? The first time you're cooking after school, you get your mac and cheese and you're measuring everything else out. And by the time once you understand the why behind that,
Right.
I can add this flavor to mix with that, or I don't have this, I can substitute that. But that's because you understand why things work. And the more you
Right.
can understand that about your field, I think the better off you're going to be because it makes you much more adaptable. And when things break down, you have the ability to still adapt, improvise, and overcome and succeed.
Yes. Very good point. Thank you. Thank you, Morgan, for your time today. If someone should watch this and think, wow, I would really love to find out more about Morgan or about the specific things you've mentioned today, do you mind if they connect with you through our website?
Yep, that'd be perfectly fine.
Great. Thank you so much for your time today.
Of course, they can always reach out to Heidelberg University and schedule a visit if they want to, too.
Oh, Heidelberg, do it. Thanks, Morgan.
All right. Have a good day.
You too. Bye bye.